Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marty Gould from Data Clique. Today's webinar is how to zero in on your best potential donors. And we want to thank everybody who's here today, and especially to the Florida Association of Nonprofits, because without their help, we would not be able to actually put on this webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing new tips and techniques on how it is that you can identify target donors for your nonprofit organization. So let's get started here today. And first of all, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of good friends of mine. They're people who I've known for a long time. This is Margaret. Margaret and I worked together many years ago in the radio business, and she today is the director of a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to elder care facilities. And she's their head of development and is raising money to build new facilities on this particular organization's property. And over here on the left is my friend Steve. He and I have been friends for over 40 years. Steve is sitting on the board of directors of a community foundation in Connecticut. And that's me on the right with no hair. And the guy in the middle is Stevie Van Zandt. Some of you might recognize him as Bruce Springsteen's wingman, been a part of the E Street Band since the beginning. Or some of you might know him more reasonably as Silvio from the Sopranos TV series. Steve and I were in Connecticut to actually watch the Bruce Springsteen concert, and Steve got us VIP meet and greet tickets before the show, and so we got to pose with Stevie, and there were a whole bunch of other people there who looked an awful lot like cast members of the Sopranos. It was an interesting night. But at any rate, Margaret and Steve don't know each other except through me, but it turns out that they have something in common with each other, and I'd like to share that with you. First of all, on the left is where Margaret lives in a little town called Lima in Allen County, Ohio. And on the right-hand side, that picture is where Steve lives in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Two entirely different places, one on the East Coast, one in the Midwest. On the left-hand side, this is Margaret's house. As you can see, it's a very nice house. I know she fixed it up over a long number of years. On the right-hand side is Steve's house. Got a lot more property. But I did find it interesting that both of them had houses that were white with black shutters. I don't think they planned it that way, but it was a coincidence. Now, these are the neighborhoods that Margaret and Steve live in. And you can see that on the left, Margaret's neighborhood is more urbanized. You can see the houses are all lined up. The streets go, straight vertical and horizontal. That area over there where she lives, there's a pizza place over there that I used to eat at that was very nice. And there was a high school over there that we worked with at one time to help raise money. Steve's area, you can see, is, when you're at 30,000 feet, it's streets and homes. You can see there's more greenery involved. The properties are larger, but very, very close to a commercial district. There's a Goodwill there and a Home Goods, and they even have a Shake Shack there. That's on the Post Road, US 1, which comes all the way down here to Florida. So while these places are, have similarities, and Steve and Margaret have similar opportunities, but the two areas are amazingly different. Allen County has a population of a little over 106,000. It's mostly white. The median age is 38, and there are about a little over 40,000 households with a median income of about $49,000 a year. Fairfield County is much larger, almost 9 times as large as Allen County. It is a little bit more ethnically mixed, 16% Latino and 10% Black. Median age is about the same, but as you can see, there are 8 times the number of households, 335,000, and the median income is $86,200. So these two areas are considerably different in terms of their makeup. But while there are different projects that Margaret and Steve are doing, they have similar needs. Margaret is looking for people to donate to health causes and organizations because she's the development director for a health organization, a health facility. Steve, on the other hand, is looking for high-income households that would be likely to donate to foundations like the one he sits on the board. So Both of them had approached me, and the idea now was to say, how could we help them? So Margaret's goal was to raise $3 million for new elder care facilities on a campus that was built back in the 1950s. It's a nonprofit organization, but they need to raise the money, and they're going to invest some of their own, obviously. But the main goal was to raise money from donors who are interested in this type of charitable giving. So when we looked at Margaret's needs, her challenge was to identify families that had a capacity to make a reasonably decent-sized donation. We were able to look through our database of names and addresses of every household in the United States of America, and we zeroed in on Allen County, and we found 6,077 prospects who were either well-off retirees or they were empty nester boomers who had good money. And then there was a small but significant segment of very ultra-wealthy people. So this was the first chance that Margaret had to be able to see if there were people who had the capacity to give. And certainly one of the points that I thought was important here was that if you're talking about retirees who'd be looking one day at assisted living facilities, or empty nester boomers who have elderly parents where they would be making the decision about where to place them in a facility, this would create a greater association for the potential to donate. So then we wanted to dig a little deeper. So we were actually able to find donors who give specifically to health nonprofit organizations. And what we wound up with was finding a small segment, but certainly significant for Margaret's community, of 344 donor households who rated above average for donating to health organizations. The rating of 2.4 is based on a scale of 1 to 9, actually 0 to 9, 0 meaning that they don't donate to health organizations, and anything above a 1 is pretty significant. In this case, this data is collected through the Experian database of behavioral characteristics, which measures a lot of information on the basis of credit card purchases and other types of reported behavior, such as making charitable contributions. And it was interesting that the average age of these 344 people was a little over 70 years old. So we knew we had a fairly large segment of the market where they could be solicited for donations, but then we saw this smaller segment that could be a much higher percentage donor and could have the capacity to give at a higher level. So the next step was to find other families who match the donor profile. So first we found people that were in the high wealth segment. That was those first three that I showed you. Now we're going to look for other people who would donate to a health-related organization, but maybe aren't as well off financially, so that their donations would be smaller, but they still could contribute. So we found 5,000 households, and we could match them by the age of the resident in the household. We could measure it by their home value. We looked at their health rating score, which said that all these people had to have scored a 2 or better. So we knew that these people were donors to health charities and organizations or health causes, and that we knew that they had some capacity to give, although it might not have been as high as the others. So now we got a pretty good profile. So Margaret had put this stuff to work, and I'll show you in a minute how that actually worked for her. And she said to me, she said, this was the best programming for fundraising that she's ever had, that it made the process very simple. She's already raised over $300,000 in just a few months in the quiet phase of their campaign. So she's already 10% of the way, and they haven't really started to market yet. So she had a great deal of confidence in the program now that she knew exactly who to target. She knew a lot of those people on those lists by name because she'd been in the community for so long. So it gave her a really good start to getting to that $3 million capital campaign goal. Now, Steve's goal was a little bit different. His job was to raise awareness of the community foundation of which he is a member to attract wealthy donors in Fairfield County. So when we started to do Steve's research, the idea was first to identify donor households who had incomes above $100,000 a year. They really didn't have a good handle on how many people there were and where they were located. So we dug into our database of all the households in Fairfield County, and we found 135,282 households with income of at least $100,000 and up to $250,000 and above. And we have all the names and addresses of each one of those people. So the question was, what was going to happen next? Well, the foundation wanted to gather information from people in the community about what their perceptions were of the community foundation's function. So they had done a SurveyMonkey survey, but because their data was really kind of sketchy and incomplete, they didn't get a good enough return on the number of surveys to get a real good picture of themselves. So they wanted to improve their survey response rates specifically from these high-income donors. So the idea was now to get more strategic and more tactical in who would get these surveys. In this case, it would be people who had incomes of over $100,000 a year and that had some capacity of past performance donating to at least any particular charity, rather than the specific health-related charity that Margaret's goal was. In this case, the Community Foundation serves many different purposes. So what we decided was to acquire email addresses of the prospects that would be then turned around and used for surveying purposes, meaning to distribute the SurveyMonkey survey via email. And to do that, we had to go in and dig into an area where you could pick up emails that were absolutely pristine, meaning they were opt-in emails, emails that were compliant with spam regulations. And so we ran these names and addresses through a database and matched up these emails, and we came up with 42,000 of them, 42,000 people who we could get good email addresses on. That was a very high return rate, much higher than we had normally were expecting to see. So about 31% of all of those $100,000 plus households had a valid email address. And then what we did was we went through a cleaning system to let people opt out. If anybody didn't want, they received an email from the foundation that said, hey, we're going to be conducting some research. We'd like you to participate. If you don't want to participate or don't want to receive any email messages from us, just opt out here and it'll be fine. So there were people who opted out, but not very many. And they wound up with this really pristine, clean list of 42,000. And the nice part about it is that there were 11,000 households with household income over $250,000, and 65% of the list were likely to make a donation because they had a past history of making charitable contributions. So the other issue that Steve's foundation had was that they wanted to make sure that all the cities in the county were represented proportionally. In the first survey, most of the surveys wound up in more rural, less sparsely populated areas of the county. And therefore, they did not get a realistic picture of potential survey participants because the distribution of the surveys was not proportional. So what we did was we took the actual count of the people who fit into that 42,000 email list, the good list, and we then found out a proportional ratio of what each town would get in the way of numbers of emails distributed in each of those cities. And it came out really nicely. So this is a map of Fairfield County's townships or cities. Down along the bottom are the most heavily populated areas because that's along the water, and this other area that kind of sticks up kind of like a big boot at the top is a more rural area because it's away from the water. So we took all 42,000 data points that we had and we plotted them on a map. And here's what the map looked like. Interestingly enough, doesn't the pattern on the left mirror the pattern on the right? And all the blue dots that you see represent a household. And you can see the higher concentration of households with the deeper concentration of blues along the water. This is proportional distribution because there's more population in the cities of Greenwich and Stamford and other cities, Bridgeport, along the water. So this is now an accurate sample. And from that 42,000, the foundation could then pick a proportional subset, meaning purchasing a specific number of emails that they would use to conduct their survey. So My friend Steve says he thought he had never seen this kind of level of detailed data. In fact, he said to me, and he's done a lot of research in his life, he said what really surprised him was the ability to pinpoint wealthy prospects, which was something that was really bugging him. And he said particularly the idea of knowing which people were wealthy but also had a donor history made it a much easier task to try to flesh out what people think in their community so that the foundation can be responsive. So let's review what the two of my friends, Margaret and Steve, have done in terms of their investment. So Margaret bought a target mailing list of 5,000 names, the 5,000 people coming from that profile that we showed you earlier. She spent a total of $625. That's what it cost her for the list. Steve bought an email list of 8,000 addresses, just under 8,000, and he wound up paying a total of $2,450. How'd this work out? Well, for Margaret, she paid about 12.5 cents a name. And for Steve, he paid a little over 30 cents a name. But they were doing two different things. Margaret's going to take her target list, and they're going to break it down to make in-person calls for high-end donors, and then the rest she's going to do direct mail with. Steve is doing a research project for his foundation, so the email addresses are more expensive, especially the type of email addresses that we provided to him, which were these totally clean, don't have to worry about bounces or bad emails. So it cost a little bit more money, but on par, both organizations felt that they were getting their money's worth and were able to justify the cost to their boards because they had specific goals that they had to attain and achieve, and they didn't know where else to go to get this type of information. So, talk about putting these tools to work for your nonprofit. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can do like Steve and learn more about your current customers, or you can go find potential donors who are in support of your mission like Margaret did. You can segment campaigns. What we mean by segmenting is that by looking at your target list of potential donors, they can be broken down into groups where they share similar characteristics. So you can send one message or one theme or one offer to a certain group and then switch the offer or the theme or the message to another group based on income, based on their ability to donate, based upon their history or their attachment to the cause. And that can be very helpful in terms of increasing response rates. You can survey prospects like the Community Foundation did in Connecticut. A SurveyMonkey survey can be executed for free. You can make your own survey. You can use some type of list, either one that you already have, or to reach out to a list that is a mirror of your current donors, and then you can get additional information from people about how they feel about your charity and their ability to donate. You can leverage social media with all of this information by crafting your messages on the basis of what you've learned from the people who are now part of your main target audience. And that can help drive potential donors back to your website, or to make a telephone call, or to be prepared because they have a better awareness of your nonprofit when you go in to ask them to take a survey, for example, or to start an email campaign. And with this, all of this, then you can build donor profiles that are very specific, where you know the numbers of people, you know who they are, and you know what the right level of ask is when you're going in for a capital campaign or an annual campaign. So there are a number of individual contributor types that we have in our database that Experian has created. One is for religious institutions, people who donate to religious institutions, people who donate to political parties or causes. As you've seen, health causes or institutions are on that list. And then there's another category for general donations. So depending on what kind of nonprofit organization you're running and where you think whether or not your target market is very narrowly connected to what you do, or would it be likely to be exposed to the general community, now you can actually start to sort your list based on that particular set of criteria. And of course, now you can market in multiple ways. Like we said, we showed you how you can do this by email. It works very well. You can do with direct mail and to segment lists, just like we talked about segmenting segments in behaviors or ability to give, or by income level. We even plot maps for clients that you saw before, and if you have never done this before, it will definitely open your eyes to see what your donors, your past donors, or your prospect list looks like on a map. And we're offering for free, if you want to send us your address after we're finished with this presentation today, send us an email with the address of your nonprofit location, and we will map all the people who would fit within a 10-mile radius of your location. And if you can also tell us what particular donor segment might be your segment, we'll plot those for you, and you can actually see them as to where they are. We won't give you the names and addresses yet, but we'll show them to you on a map so you can see where they are. So just quickly review for you for options, so you're trying to figure out price. Generally, there are minimums for us to deal with our suppliers, but a mailing list, a minimum charge is $625. That gets you 5,000 emails, so it's 12.5 cents each. If you're using, that's Margaret's plan. It's mailing list, meaning names and addresses. I apologize for that. So that's the Margaret list plan. And if you wanted to do the email program like Steve did, that's 30.6 cents a piece, and the minimum is $1,500. But we guarantee you a minimum of 5,000 good email addresses in that count for $1,500. So there's two ways for you to think about how to execute. That's the execution side. The first side is the analytical side, and we certainly do believe strongly that a better look at your data, and the more you analyze it, the better decisions that you can make, because great marketing really is all about making great decisions. And we're in the business of data analytics here, and there was a recent consulting group, Deloitte, which is one of the former Big 8 accounting firms that are doing an awful lot in digital advertising these days with their clients. Fewer than 1 in 4 marketers are leveraging their data today. 23%. That means that more than 4 out of 5 marketers are not tapping that great resource of their data to make better decisions about their marketing, to be able to track whether or not their efforts are paying off, whether or not they are paying for their new donors at an appropriate price level. And that, I think, has a big impact on leaving business on the table by not understanding enough about the information that you already have in your own databases, that you are losing out on being able to market to people who could very well be supportive of your causes or your goals and not even know about it. But with this information, you'll know, and you'll be in control of making the marketing decisions, and you'll be able to leverage your data into a stronger, better, broader campaign for whatever you're doing. And we all know that, especially things like capital campaigns and annual campaigns and other events, these take a lot of work and a lot of time, and they can be very difficult to execute, to make goals. But we think strongly that leveraging your own data can really work in improving your results and your efficiency. So now what I'd like to do is unmute everybody in the meeting. Thank you. Nice Miss Lady voice. So if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you now about what you've seen today, or any other questions that you have regarding how to use data to improve your marketing efforts in general. Somebody's always got to go first and is kind of shy, aren't they? Let's see if I see any. We've got any chat questions. If you don't feel like you want to talk about them and you'd rather just write them down and send them to us, that's fine. That wouldn't be a problem. Are any of you involved right now in planning campaigns or looking to start an additional fundraising effort in a new initiative, or trying to go back on a previous initiative? We always have to dangle incentives, Chuck, don't we? We have to dangle incentives in front of people to get them to talk.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm interested in getting information. This is Jerry Timberlake. I'm interested in getting information about potential donors. But of course, just getting started, you've got to get the funds together to get the information that you need. But this webinar has been helpful in order to see just some of the things that you can do. I was very interested in seeing the categories in terms of finding donors based on their history of donating and based on their finances and based on their interest in the cause. So at this stage of the game for me, I am more in the phase of data gathering to see what kind of resources there are so that when I am financially able to take advantage of those resources such as yours, I know the kind of questions to ask and I know who to call to be able to get. So that's not so much as a question as just an observation as a part of my beginning research.
Well, Jerry, that's very nice. Very brave of you to be the first one to comment, and I wish you a lot of luck. Do you have have you gathered any information to this point? Have you had people who inquired about your nonprofit, or have you executed any types of strategies that would allow you to have collected any data?
No, I'm just twisting the arm of family and friends.
Okay. Well, that's a good place to start. And you know, it's not such a bad thing if you're thinking about this. And I know that we've got a number of smaller startup organizations. We hear from them often, and I think there are a couple more who are on the call who are in that stage. Jerry, what I do is I'd invite everybody over to dinner who's in the neighborhood, who's in your family and close friends, and sit down and have a conversation about what you're trying to do, and actually quiz them a little bit. Make yourself up a little questionnaire that you can ask them and say, ask them the questions that some of the questions that we talked about here in this presentation. What Margaret and Steve were asking is to say, do you donate to charities? If so, what kind of charities do you donate to? What types of charities do you support, and why? And by asking those questions, meaning you're asking about their donative behavior, for other people before you've asked for yourself, then you would be able to build a very modest but certainly worthwhile database of understanding what your family thinks, what their donative level is, and then you can frame your ask in a much more professional way that would resonate with them, because you'd be doing something that they are interested in supporting beyond the fact that you're related by blood or marriage or alimony payments. I don't know. So Jerry, you can do that kind of what we call shirt tail research as a starting point, and then you can try from there to find some words and language that you use in your marketing presentation to help see if there are other people. You can say, well, who are other people who look like my relatives? Because if they think it's a good idea, other people who are at their same income level, their same age, and their same charitable interest, they would be likely to be as responsive, maybe not quite as responsive as with a family member, but they would be there for you. And I think that's a good way to start, where it doesn't cost you a dime except to invite them over for dinner.
Thank you.
Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth here? I see a note here. You want to get in on the conversation? How do you get the clean emails from Experian originally? When you say it is clean, what do they opt into? Okay, so it's a multiple step process for us. The first step is we have a list of names and addresses in your geographical area that comes from Experian. That data is updated for us every 90 days. So we know every 3 months, if people have moved or died or their circumstances have changed in some way, we know that. Then we take that list and we send it to a provider who specializes in clean email lists. And what that means is they take the name and address data that we have. We also include the email address when it's available. It's not always available on the Experian side. But then the second company finds the most up-to-date email list that is available attached to each one of those records. At that point, they match up into their master database to make sure that that is the most up-to-date email. If there are older email addresses that are in the system, they go to make sure to see which one is the active one. And then they go back and craft a message for the nonprofit organization that would, and we've assisted in those where we help craft that language, which would be an email that would be sent out to all the people on the list that you purchased. And it would come from your organization. So in this case, let's say this came from the Data Clique Nonprofit Foundation, and we said we're interested in finding out more about your thoughts and concerns regarding the rampant spread of rubber band use in the production of slingshots. I don't know, just made it up. So if you're interested in helping us out, we're going to be sending out an email survey in the next week or two, and we would like you to participate. And if you'd like to see more messages from our foundation, you don't have to do anything. We will take care of it all. But if you don't want to participate and you don't want to receive anything from us, just click not interested, and you won't be bothered again. And that's what we did in Connecticut. So we took away all those emails of the people who said they didn't want to subscribe, and we were left with a clean list. So basically, it's not an opt-in. In this case, it's an opt-out. You take out the ones that do not want to receive the message. I hope that answers your question, Elizabeth. But no, wait a minute, that's Pamela, right? That came from Lynn and Margaret. I don't know why I thought Elizabeth. Well, I hope you guys got that right. Other questions that you might have, either by typing in the chat box or unmuting yourself. Let's see, we haven't heard from Betty. We haven't heard from David. Oh, yes, we have heard from David and Elizabeth. So, if all of a sudden, after you hang up, you figure out that there was a question that you meant to ask, but chose not to, and send it to us privately, or it came to mind, our information is right here on this page. You can email us at info@dataclique.com, or you can call us here at the office. We're both here. Marty and Chuck are both here. The number's 954-9995, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions you have, or to help you point in the right direction in your nonprofit journey. You can also, by the way, when you're recording this webinar, you'll be able to go to our website and see the entire presentation again. If you wanted to get more notes and you had a question about something, you can go to the website dataclique.com/FANO, F-A-N-O, because that's shorter than the nonprofit. So if you want to see this, it'll be posted. I would say give us about 20 minutes or so, and it should show up there at dataclique.com/FANO. So on behalf of everyone here at Data Clique and at the association, we want to thank you for participating today. We hope that you learned something and that you'll be able to take this to your next level. And we wish you a lot of luck in the next campaign that you have. So thanks very much for joining us today, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.